I'm Colin Fix. I'm a senior character designer on BioShock 2. The job of a character designer is to work with your creative leads and try to figure out basically the overall look of the characters in the game. It was so insane how my just personal art and kind of my aesthetic fit with the BioShock world so well. Like Jordan would start talking about, weird creepy masks, and I'm like, weird creepy masks? They're all over my sketchbook, and then they're my portfolio. I love weird creepy masks. And he mentioned something about some horror movie. I'm like, I love that horror movie. Like everything just like clicked so perfectly. I was like, I have to do this. My very first day here, I sat down with Jordan Thomas, the creative director, and he's like, hey, psst, come over here, let's go in this conference room and talk for a little bit. I'm like, okay. So usually you'd think like your first day is you're making sure that your email is set up and then, you have the proper tools and your seat's okay and all. He takes me into a room and just immediately starts throwing all these ideas at me about who this character is. I'm like, holy crap, dude. Like, what? Whew, it's kind of a big overload, but it's sort of like that working with Jordan throughout the project. So like the big sister, like the first day, he sits me down, he starts talking about this character that he was thinking of as like a wounded bird or like a bird with broken wings or possibly relating her as a butterfly and being like welded together and broken and all these things. I'm like, good Lord, and like it's a big daddy, but it's a girl this time, and she's a teenage girl, and I'm like, oh my God. So then I go back to my desk and like I have all this information, so I just had to sit down and start sketching these ideas out. Again, kind of trying to use elements from the first big daddies, like the cage and the bouncer. I was thinking that the little sisters were kind of a keyhole shape and the big daddies were giant squares. It was kind of a challenge of conveying this kind of tortured soul, like a sad person who's experienced loss. She's come back to Rapture and maybe she's gathering things that were important to her when she was a little kid. Kind of had this eclectic, weird look to her. I think Jordan was kind of cueing in on this one. He liked something about the look of it. Kind of looked like she could be kind of dangerous or be able to hurt you, whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, just it's someone who's experienced something horrible in their life and is trying to deal with it. So then I was working on this. It was starting to come together for me. She felt kind of awkward and kind of tortured. But then I was talking to Jeff Weir, our animation supervisor, about it. He kind of looked at it and he said, I think it's looking cool, but something about it just isn't threatening. With that in mind, I worked out this sketch, which kind of felt more threatening and creepy. I took the bouncer character and kind of deconstructed the bouncer and thought about like all the little elements on him. How could I shift them and rearrange them and make it into this new character? So like the cage that's on the front of him over his helmet, I took it and I moved it to her back and I kind of had it offset. And I kind of had this idea where it's kind of like her spine. And so it's like she's sort of like this twisted, sad, broken character. The idea that she's a little girl trying to wear this Big Daddy armor, that she would need some sort of help. Jeff came up with the idea of having the little bows on her. You're conveying the idea of female, little girl. The idea for the cage was that the sister would start kidnapping little girls and turn them into little sisters. So the cage was a place that she could put them, and it'd be kind of a safe house, or like a womb sort of thing. So the little sisters would be on the back, and they would do little kid drawings on her tank. So I put little kid drawings on it, and they would decorate her with bows, and kind of like a little girl would do to her friend.
This way.
There's a new class of character called the Brute, which is basically like a big mutated Hulk type of character. An earlier version of the Brute. Jeff and I really wanted to make sure that this character didn't look like he went to the gym and worked out each individual muscle group. He just looked like a big guy who, was maybe mutated some through genetics, but also just kind of naturally big and strong. Basically, I looked at him as a guy who's addicted to steroids, and he just wants to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So, like his watch, his like muscles and everything grew around the watch. And with just the splicers in general, I really saw them as junkies. They are, they're addicted to Adam. So I tried to incorporate some visuals from real life junkies into the splicers. Whatever clothing he was kind of wearing is just kind of ripped and shredded because he's gotten bigger, but maybe he was walking through Rapture one day and wanted to make himself feel good, so he found like a tie on a dead guy or something and took it off and put it on himself to kind of make himself, you know, feel better about life. And then of course I incorporated some butt crack because that's fun. I think the splicers are essentially sad and gross, so there's a lot of things like that that we incorporated into these characters. That was a big component for the character design in BioShock 2, was trying to get across visuals on the characters that help tell the story as well, because that's one of the things that so successful in BioShock 1 with the environments was you would walk into a room and just the room itself would tell you a story. It's been like the best project I've ever worked on, like, and I personally feel like redemption. I feel like I did a real good job. Hopefully other people will feel the same, but I feel real positive about the experience.
My name is Hogarth de la Plante. I'm the lead environment artist on BioShock 2. I have a team of people who are artists who are responsible for the art side of building out Rapture. So, you know, they build architecture, they do lighting, they do, you know, like light fixture design and, you know, all the environment design that goes into a game. Basically anything that's not character or animation related, my team is responsible for building the models, placing them in the world, and we work very closely with level designers to make sure that Rapture not only looks really beautiful, but also is a functional gameplay space, tactically speaking, for BioShock's tool set. This is really the first space in the game that you actually can drive your character around in. This is the Adonis Luxury Resort. So you open up the game in this kind of luxury hotel and spa, but this place has been just utterly destroyed and taken over by the ocean. So, you know, there's a lot of flooding that's happened in here. The architecture of Rapture and everything is kind of crumbly and wrinkly looking on the architectural level, but then you have these really beautiful, colorful life forms that have taken over in here. You're in like a ecological environment that's been evolving and is sort of hyper-evolving because of the presence of Adam and this sort of genetic fast forward. You can see some of it outside the windows up here as well. You know, these bright glowing kelp that has these, you know, kind of light bulby pods on it and stuff like that. So you're going to see, you know, weird life forms, and it's sort of alien feeling and very colorful. A lot of what was colorful from the original BioShock was the kind of Las Vegas-y neon and stuff like that. In BioShock 2, we wanted a lot of the color to come from this life that's kind of like creeping in through the windows, and in some environments that you visit in BioShock 2 that used to be completely submerged that are now emptied out of water. You get to actually see the effects of that. So Rapture, in that respect, it's sort of been broken down and then built back up in this organic way.
At last, a signal. You, who are bringing this dead city to life, listen. My name, it is Tannenbaum. I know who you are.
One level that I think turned out really well and was an amazing collaboration, like I've been talking about, between art and design is the Ryan Amusements level. Just to give people an idea of how complicated these levels are when we're finished with them and how many objects are in them. This is basically like a bird's eye view of the entire Ryan Amusements level, and you have to realize also that this thing is like multiple floors. So, you know, there are like this museum location here in the middle actually has like a top floor and a bottom floor with all the exhibits and everything on it. Static meshes, these are things that are built in 3D Studio Max by level modelers, and these are kind of what dress up the world. So we wanted people to understand the things about Rapture as a location and who Andrew Ryan was and what the ideology was that helped build Rapture, who had not played BioShock, but at the same time we don't want to bore people who have played BioShock. So we were like, oh, how are we going to do that? We came up with this idea that we were going to make it like a theme park. There are kids being born in Rapture, and they know that their parents have come from the surface world, and Ryan wants to keep Rapture a secret and wants to really, you know, really pile his views on top of any new children that are being born in Rapture. The first scene you see up here, we wanted it to look like, oh, we're going to the surface. Look at how beautiful the surface is, right? Everyone thinks that the surface is a great place to be. So you come up here and you've got kind of like this terrestrial sort of woodsy scene with some water, and everything's painted on backdrops and stuff, and it's, you know, it looks kind of cool. In the actual game, you get attacked by a bunch of splicers when you come up here, so that spoils the scenery a little bit. These displays that we wanted to set up that kind of show how Rapture was physically constructed with divers and everything building it. So, so Devin and Tynan sketched all this stuff out. Then we started thinking about the actual lessons. As you play through the level, you get to see the Journey to the Surface ride, and you get to see these little lessons that are taught about the surface world and how evil it supposedly is in Andrew Ryan's mind. So we started thinking about how these characters were going to get built. This is what it looks like, after we decorate the thing out. We had our team in Shanghai built these really creepy animatronic people models. That you can actually use telekinesis to tear off their heads and arms and stuff and use them as weapons. This is one of my personal favorite meshes in the Ryan Amusements level, the plaster paper mache dog.
On the surface, the farmer tills the soil, trading the strength of his arm for a hoe.
So he's created this propaganda theme park that teaches kids how terrifying the surface world is, because obviously they've heard about it and maybe they're curious about it, but you never want to go there because the surface world is terrifying.
Hello there. My name is Andrew Ryan. I built the city of Rapture for children just like you.
The reason I make games, I think I like the idea of exploring and moving through 3D space. Just on a very fundamental level. I don't know what it is about that for me that I like. I fly airplanes also. I think there's something related for me to flying and moving through 3D space and making and working on 3D spaces that I want people to be able to explore. So for me, working in the environment department on a game like BioShock, where the environment not only tells these intricate stories and is a textural and interestingly lit environment, I guess, those things help draw you through the space and make you want to be able to climb around in there and dig through every little nook and cranny. And there's something about moving through that 3D space that I'm really interested in, and I want my audience to be interested in that too. So hopefully we did a good job, and people want to climb around in Rapture.
My name is Michael Camper. I was the audio lead on BioShock 2. Basically, everything you hear in the game went through me. Basically, I'm in charge of all the audio in the game. I'm in charge of sound effects, music, dialogue, all the systemic audio like the guns and the footsteps and things like that, special scripted sequences, working with our composer, Gary Scheinman, on the score, making sure all that gets implemented properly, working with our audio programmer to make sure we have the tools that we need to implement everything, and hiring a great bunch of guys to put our audio together. Before I came into games, I spent about 10 years in movies and television, and so I have a really deep history in sort of creating a cinematic feel for environments and stuff like that. I really enjoyed when I was working in film doing the backgrounds, sort of creating sort of the background space that the characters are in and having that help tell the story that they were telling. And so I wanted to really make sure when I came to BioShock 2 that I was helping create the backgrounds and how the backgrounds would be part of this story and how it would really tell the tale of the space that you were in.
Trying to hide the atom. Can I come out to play again, Mr. B?
So certainly the big sister, her voice was a big part of what sold the character as this sort of beast that was coming after you. And there's certainly a lot of different variations and iterations we went through. Trying different styles of things, processed differently, dogs and whales and seals and things like that to processed in different ways until we were able to find the right mix of what the big sister should sound like at any given time. Well, basically, you approach a level in the game and say, okay, what is this level doing? You know, where is this level? And we wanted this very sort of lonely feel to it, but it also has this sense of the place is falling apart. I mean, this is Rapture 10 years later. It's even more in a shambles. No one's been doing any upkeep to the place, so there's creaks and cracks and stuff falling over. So I really wanted the sense of dread from the environment that it could really, you could be walking on the hallway and all of a sudden it could collapse on you. And then we would take the music from Gary that we had tailored to each level. We sort of, when we were working with Gary, we were tailoring each piece of each level to, you know, sort of have its own style of music. And then so we would take that and sort of lay that over areas that we felt it was appropriate, whether it was mostly like the scripted sequences, certainly the big story moments all had their sort of cues to them, but also reveals of areas. The first time you walk into a big area of Rapture, you may get a new piece of the score coming in to sort of help you settle into that and sort of tell you psychologically, okay, this is what this area is about. And so the whole soundscape is very carefully crafted to produce that for the player. One thing we also wanted to do with the music was really amp up the combat. And we really went into Gary and had him do a whole mess of new, really action-packed sequences, because there's a lot of really big fight sequences in this game, a bunch of big boss battles. You also have the ambushes that you do with your little sister, and we wanted to make sure we had a whole lot of different fight cues that really worked really well with those sequences. And so I think Gary created some really amazing pieces, and they really amp up those sequences very nicely. For example, with the rivet gun, you know, I start out with just dragging in a whole bunch of different sounds and seeing, you know, sort of what worked well together, you know, until I started to find, you know, a weapon that was believable with the visuals that I had. You have to sort of account for all variables. You never know what the player's going to do next. All you can do is the sounds that you do have control over, the systemic weapons and movement sounds and things like that, and the world sounds is sort of just, you know, get those as sounding as cool and crisp as possible. Hopefully whatever the player happens to experience as they're going through the world, you know, they'll make it'll be believable for them. Part of creating a good audio soundscape in film or in games is making it believable to the audience. You want the audience to believe that they're actually in this space. And audio goes an awful long way to making that happen. You can have really awesome visual effects, but if the audio is not there supporting it, it's going to fall flat.
I'm Jeff Weir. I'm the animation supervisor on BioShock 2. On BioShock 2, the animation supervisor had a hybrid role. I was in charge of character development all the way from concept to execution of the animation in the game. So it was really, really broad. So basically I worked with concept artists like Colin Fix, one of our senior concept artists, designing characters like the new Subject Delta, Big Daddy, and characters like Big Sister and all those kind of really fun, interesting characters from the new game. Going from BioShock 1 to BioShock 2's animation, one of the main areas of focus was in the idea of character empathy. By that we mean we want people to really care about the characters they're seeing in the game. So for that, we wanted to make characters that had more detail in their faces. So when you came up to them, you could understand their plight and their loss and everything that happened to them. And so for that, we have a full set of blend-shaped animations for their face, and we also did things like normal map blending, which means that if someone goes from being like a straight normal face to being like this, you can see little wrinkles forming in their forehead and crow's feet around their eyes and that kind of stuff. And that basically gives you more to latch onto in terms of the character. This is the character of Grace. Here she is doing some of her acting for a key scene that she has in the game. Over here you can see that we set this very complex system of controls for her. And you see, this is controls only her upper lip here. And if this moves around here, you can see how I can control either side of her lip there. Well, basically, for animation, what we do first is we talk with Jordan, our creative director, and we try to figure out who the character really is. For the big sister, she was a really interesting character because she's what happens to a little sister when she grows up and becomes someone like a big daddy. And for her, that meant that she had this really awkward quality to her, where she just grew a foot in a period of a year, and she's not used to her body, and that made her kind of this idea of this kind of unstable grace, where she kind of was starting to be someone who had this beautiful womanly quality, but still was sort of gangly and not really sure of how to handle herself. So once we have that idea figured out, we start working on previous ideas of how she actually would move. For that, I might get up and sort of walk really funny around the room, or we might look at some footage of a ballet dancer and someone who's a paraplegic, and sort of get inspiration from all different sources. And then we start just doing animation, and from there we just start testing things out in the game and seeing how it feels, and then seeing what resonates with the character. So here she is. There's her wireframe mesh. You can see all the detail. This is her just walking and going from being, passive to being aggressive. And you see that really kind of, she has a really kind of crippled kind of inset leg, and really kind of not really feeling like she's a normal person at all, like she's broken and been misused. And she, of course, as such, is very violent. So here's one of her grapple attacks right here. She's a very violent lady. In designing the new Big Daddy, Subject Delta, it was a really huge challenge. There's so much weight and so much love for the Big Daddies and who they are. We want to make sure that our character stood beside Rosie and Bouncer and these other Big Daddies from the first game. Also, he had to be a different Big Daddy. He's a prototype Big Daddy. He's not like the ones you see in the first game. He's not this guy that's a single-use melee guy like this big guy back here, or like Rosie who just shoots guns from afar. He really is sort of like a jack-of-all-daddies, kind of guy. Basically he's a test bed for seeing what works and didn't work. So basically with that, we decided to make a character that was a little more human proportions. A guy that was a little more ready to be agile and move around, but still powerful like a daddy. We also wanted to be very mysterious and keep with the feel that Big Daddies are unknown, so you can't see him at all, and no one has any idea what's inside them. No one really ever gets an idea of what's inside a Big Daddy. That's kind of the mystery of the game. And of course, one of the things we also work out is how he's actually working the game. So here you can see his health and Eve that worked down his arm in order for him to be able to fire plasmids, and his drill, of course, to be able to do stuff. And here's I'll show you his drill. And this is a fully upgraded drill. The drill started as more of a base model, but we use a lot of, I have the concepts for this here too. Here's a concept for it. A beautiful illustration by Mark Gabbana. I'm working out all the forms. So basically, like, each weapon in the game has all these different levels of upgrades. So here's the base drill would just be this, but then we had this sort of counter-spinning drill for extra damage, and these diamond heads and these nozzles that basically allow it to go along without dying and that kind of stuff. Being new to the BioShock franchise, it was a huge, weight on my shoulders. I mean, I knew how much everyone loved the first game and how wonderful it was, and for me, it took a really long time to really just study it and understand what it is that made it what it was. Like I said, BioShock to me is a very complicated mix of ingredients. It's like this curry of like 25 ingredients. It's not like a simple dish. It's like this thing where you put some of this, some of that, some of this in it, and then all of a sudden it just starts tasting wrong. So it takes a long time to figure out what it is that makes BioShock BioShock. And for me, it was just exciting to sort of basically dive into like Hoagie's brain or Jordan's brain and sort of figure out what it was to them and start gelling in this idea of what BioShock really is. And it really was a blast because it's such a rich world to play in.
I'm Steve Gaynor, and I'm a level designer on BioShock 2. A level designer's job is basically to work with a level artist to get all the interactivity into the game. So we work together with an artist to define the layout, the shapes of all the rooms, where everything is going to be in relation to one another, and then what I do is I put in the enemies, the pickups, all of the scripted sequences that you might run into if something falls over, explodes, new enemies show up. All of the stuff that you do in the game is basically my job. These nodes define where enemies can move through the space. So they use these points in the world to define, where's the floor, where are blockages, where are cover items, where are interesting things that I might want to run to and use, like a health station. Level design and level art at 2K Marin are really tightly integrated. Design informs art, and art informs design, just on a moment-to-moment basis practically, as opposed to, I'm going to do my design work over here, you're going to do your artwork over there, let's just kind of, each stay on our own corners. One designer and one artist is very much a team on a level, and it's a product of both of their work together. I think that to design a BioShock level, you need a number of different, design influences from, games that are very much in the same tradition as BioShock, other games that have non-linear layouts. We also take a lot of influence from games that are more crafted and well, not crafted, but are more scripted and more focused on spectacle, because part of Rapture is that amazing things happen there. And so we always, try to keep up with the most cutting-edge, exciting games that have those really memorable moments in them, so that we can work those into the non-linear, explorable, open-ended form that defines BioShock. I designed the first level of the game, which people will be playing right off the bat as soon as you jump in. That level went through a lot of changes, and we kind of ended up not exactly rebooting it, but we did a really deep pass on it late in development to try and make the beginning of the game as effective and as exciting as we could. And so it was kind of my job to jump in late and define what the first level of the game was going to be and make it happen, work with Devin St. Clair, the level artist that was assigned to the level, and basically just get the player into the experience, introduce them to what's changed in Rapture, what the new characters and what the new enemies and everything are going to be, and set them up to enjoy the rest of the game. There are high expectations coming in from the first game. And luckily I was a fan of the first game like everyone else was before I started working on the second one, so I had those same high expectations for a sequel. Luckily, we were making a sequel to a really successful, really well-established game. I tried to refer back to the first game as much as I could, use it for inspiration, and also try to come up with new things that the series hadn't done before. I didn't really feel the outside pressure from the fan community or whatever other interest any more than I felt it from myself, because I want it to be as good as anybody else does. The player can go underwater in BioShock 2, so we have a whole new set of paradigms of there are airlocks that you can go in and out of, and you can try to lure enemies into them, and we have to keep track of is anything crazy going to happen if you have a little sister when you try to go underwater, or this side or the other thing. A level designer's job, at least at one stage in the project, is to do things like set a trigger radius, make sure that it's properly linked up to scripts so that when the player touches it, the scripts go off. The scripts are the things that define what's going to happen when a player gets an item, or when sounds play, or basically anything that as you move through the game, there's some little moment that's going to add to the overall experience. You could throw objects at enemies with telekinesis in BioShock 1, and in BioShock 2 there are enemies that will throw them back at you. Anywhere that there was going to be a big fight with one of the enemies that can use the environment against you in a new way, we had to make sure there's enough things for the player to dodge and catch with TK and throw back. We have the same kinds of affordances like water that you can lure someone into and shock them. We've added a few more ways to get things like fire into the world. There are pipes along some of the walls that will spew fire when you shoot them. Basically, we wanted to set up the environments in BioShock 2 so that the player could be as strategic as they wanted to be in any given encounter. There's so many different things that the player of BioShock and BioShock 2 can do. It was our job to make sure that if someone really loved a strategy that involved having somewhere that you could shock an enemy, that we always give them some way to bring that strategy into their current encounter and have fun the way they want to. I'll be interested to see what people think of it when they jump into BioShock 2.